Okay, sorry I'm a little late. Today I want to talk to you about stress, hormone imbalance, and mood disorders. How are they all related? And what can I do about it? And what do I need to know? So that's what I want to talk to you about today. My name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja. And I want to talk to you about how we can understand a little bit more about the relationship between all of these. So let's start off with the obvious. We're going through crazy times right now in terms of the COVID-19 pandemic and the concern for social isolation and containment and flattening the curve and keeping occupied and not going to work and worrying about finances and maybe having more interaction with loved ones than usual. And that can be disruptive. Obviously wondering about how you're going to pay for certain things. And just feeling overwhelmed. That's probably going on at an all-time high right now. But in general, it's just accelerated what was already going on in terms of not enough hours in the day to get everything done, multitasking, too much days at the end of the month to get everything accomplished, too little days, not having libido, not being focused, not being able to concentrate, erratic cycles, feeling bloated, crashing in the middle of the day, not being able to concentrate, and just not handling stress very well. That's what we want to talk about. But then there's also the mood disorder component. So I originally had anxiety, but it's not only anxiety, right? Because some people will think, well, that doesn't include me if I'm depressed or I feel manic or overwhelmed, and I don't really notice that as being anxious. But I just don't, I feel on edge, or I feel sad, or I feel melancholy, or I don't feel. I don't feel. A lot of people tell me that anhedonia, lack of pleasure, lack of just being engaged in your life and getting fulfillment. I think about serotonin in those instances, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about that as well. And the great news about all of this is a lot of the foundational things that you can do are natural, holistic, lifestyle free things that you can do. They really are. And I'll talk to you about that today too. But the really frustrating part of this is when you go to your doctor, and my guess is you're not going to your doctor right now. I think they're only taking well visits, or you're going to the emergency to get tested, but you're not going for those follow-up visits unless you're doing some telemedicine. But my guess is that when you go to the doctor, you are frustrated because they're not hearing you. Pardon me, my nose is itchy. They're not hearing you. You're telling them, look, I'm tired, I'm exhausted, I'm burnt out, I think I have adrenal fatigue. And those are sort of the kiss of death words that you use that doctors will automatically throw you out of the office or dismiss you as just another person that reads too much on the internet. And I tell you about that on my website called The Truth About Adrenal Fatigue, is that the truth about adrenal fatigue is it goes so much deeper than the adrenals. It really does. The adrenals are a big part of it, and the HPA axis and how it gets signaled and how it shuts down its feedback loops or accelerates its feedback loops or shifts the production of certain hormones in favor of other hormones, or doesn't clear things out effectively, or goes into cell danger, which I want to talk to you as well about. Doesn't mean that there isn't an adrenal HPA axis-based dysfunction. It just means that the adrenals don't necessarily completely give out and stop producing cortisol, which doctors agree that that doesn't happen. But what does happen is when you go in there telling them you think you have an adrenal-based problem, they don't think about all the extra stuff that I just mentioned and throw you out with the bathwater and think that you are crazy. And that drives me crazy myself, because that is 100% violation of the Hippocratic Oath of doing no harm, because they are committing errors of omission of not taking you serious. Besides which, the insurance companies are broken and they don't pay the doctors the time to sit down and put all these pieces together, because it takes a lot of information. There's a lot of things that have contributed to where you are right now. It's not just the outbreak of the virus that we're dealing with right now. It's what you were dealing with going into this. I was already exhausted. I was already brain fogged. I was already crashing in the middle of the day. I was already having challenges with handling stressors. I already felt overstimulated. I already felt understimulated. I already had problems with falling asleep and staying asleep and getting up. And now that's only worse. So now I want to talk to you about this. So stress, hormone imbalance, and mood disorder. So I want to talk about tests that you can be doing. I want to talk about the relationship between hormones and neurotransmission. And then I want to talk about cell danger. So let's talk about cell danger first. So cell danger is an amazing concept by Dr. Navio. You can Google that and look at it. But basically, in a nutshell, what it says is that when your body is under stress for prolonged amounts of time, it goes in an organized shifting of biochemistry for priority systems at the expense of less priority systems. That's what happens in a nutshell. So what happens, the example I'll use is, so let's say a female athlete who's highly trained and highly overtrained and very low body fat, she doesn't have her periods anymore. That's a manifestation of a cell danger response because the body doesn't have enough supply for that function, and that's not a priority. Reproduction is not a priority, and that happens to different degrees of extent, if you will, for people that may not be that athlete, but have continuation of stress over and over and over and over, to the cumulative effect is that your body's in cell danger. And it prioritizes what it does at the expense of something else. And that can create a lot of immune challenges, that can create detoxification issues, that can create hormone imbalances, neurotransmitter imbalances, and make you not deal with stress effectively. So one of the things I would recommend you do is ask your doctor, have they ever heard of the cell danger response? I think that's a great test to ask them. Hey, look, I'm doing some research on my own. I'm not the doctor. I want to be able to help you to help me. And what I've come across is something called cell danger by Dr. Robert Navio. I can put the spelling of that underneath this link. And you can ask them what their opinion is on that. And if they look at you like you're crazy, you say, well, it's in your own peer-reviewed journals. I mean, I'm not coming up out of whip snap whiz bam kind of, Reader's Digest. I'm coming out of PubMed information. That's from your own journals. Why don't you know about that? Now, give them a break, because they say that the research that is in the journals now is 17 years ahead of doctors' knowledge, unfortunately. But you have real-time doctors that are practicing the stuff in today's day and age, and it's becoming digital, precision-based medicine. But anyways, cell danger is a major, major challenge that you're dealing with, especially now with the COVID-19 virus, and especially given what you had going into it. Your body is prioritizing things. And your doctor needs to know about that. So you're in cell danger, number one. Number two, what is the relationship between hormones and neurotransmitters? So that's a really good question. So there are a lot of biochemical pathways that are very similar. I just had a consult with someone. If you think about neurotransmitters, you have your catecholamines or your amines. So things that we think about is dopamine, adrenaline, noradrenaline, histamine. These are amines that need to be cleared out through your catecholamine pathways, and that requires proper nutrition. And if you don't have the proper nutrition, or what we call substrates or cofactors or minerals, because your body's in cell danger, guess what happens? Your neurotransmitter clearance can fall down. And people would think, well, what happens then? Well, if your glutamate levels are too high, or your histamine levels are too high, or your serotonin levels are too high, or your dopamine levels are too high, you're going to be overstimulated, right? And there is something called neurotransmitter resistance, where like insulin resistance, you stop having the effect of that hormone because, or neurotransmitter in this case, because the cells will down-regulate their receptor sites, and now they're nowhere to bind to, and you have the irony or the what's the word I'm looking for? You'll have the weird circumstance of the fact that you have high neurotransmitter with low function. And when your body is delayed at clearance because of cell danger and not having the ability to clear those out, that can impact your mood. You can be anxious, overstimulated, depressed, lack of motivation, anhedonia, all those types of things. Where do hormones fit in? Well, hormones get cleared out by the catecholamine pathways as well, indirectly. Remember, when I tell you the things, it's not like set in gold or ground in granite that this is the only thing. There's a lot of intricacies that go on with other detox pathways, but they go through a lot of those same pathways, and they are subjective to the same things that cell danger will impact in terms of prioritization and shifting resources to more important things. Now, it is important to still clear out and clear out your hormones and your neurotransmitters, but if you're taking receptor inhibitors or you're taking bioidenticals, you're adding more lineup to the queue, if you will, and that can create a way overstimulated state. And I see a lot of clients that their doctor are functional anti-aging doctors, and all they're doing is putting more gas in the tank without trying to clear out the fuel line or look at the mechanics of why the engine isn't working properly. It's not going to be fixed with just putting more gas in the tank. It's just not going to work. And then the last thing I want to talk to you about are testing. So without mention or without fail, it should always be tested in my book, is a functional genomic test. Really interesting listening to Lifespan by David St. Clair and all the projections he has. There will be a time and age where we'll all have our functional genomics in a database where we can talk about potentials. We have potentials to react this way or that way with certain drugs or with certain systems or with certain foods. That's really important. We're not there yet, but you should still have a nutrigenomic functional test. 23andMe, Ancestry are not my favorites anymore. Hopefully they will get better. There's a lot of different companies. I use your genomic resource, and if you're interested in that, I'll post a link underneath the talk as well. But every client I work with is doing that because it lays the groundwork for neurotransmitter. Where is cell danger going to break the weak links? We know cell danger already unfolds this way in prioritizing more important things here and less important things there. But guess what, Mrs. Jones? Your less important thing already has a potential to not work well. So guess what? It's going to even work less well given the prioritization. Hopefully that made sense. So it all starts with that. But other things that we like to see is I like to see a urine test for hormones. We use the Dutch test. I like to see a blood test. I'm not a huge fan of saliva tests. I just had a consult today where they did a lot of different saliva tests, and they showed me that they had high cortisol in the morning, in the afternoon, and at bedtime. And they're making decisions on that, but they're not looking upstream at the cellular level as to why. Is it overactivation of mast cells, secondary to glutamate, secondary to iron problems, secondary to histamine, secondary to oxalates, secondary to stress, secondary to dopamine, secondary to sulfites? How do you know that from your saliva? You just don't. You just don't. You just don't know that. So that's what I typically recommend. Functional interpretation of your blood work. That drives me crazy. How many people are saying that their blood work is normal and they have 17 markers of maybe a possible 70 markers? Now, a lot of doctors will not pay for those tests, but some important markers I'd like to see are ceruloplasmin, RBC copper, G6PD, ferritin, believe it or not, is not on there a lot of the times. There are so many markers that we like, fasting insulin, That's not on there. I mean, how that is not on there in today's day and age drives me crazy. I just don't believe that. So those are some of the tests. And again, if you want to know what other tests there are, it would depend on what you've already done. I don't want to unnecessarily repeat tests if we don't need to, but I do like to look at some of the major elephants in the room, and that could be mold, plastics, phthalates, glyphosates, infections, Lyme, parasites, microbial disruption. The other thing I would recommend too is looking at methylation pathways. Those are really important. Today, again, I had another consult where we're looking at someone that said I had MTHFR, and it was really the last thing that we talked about, but she had major potentials in her pathways that make it difficult for recycling her SAMe. And I want to know what do those potentials look like so I can do a methylation profile. But again, what it comes down to is, okay, Joel, you're talking ABC, XYZ. I kind of follow it, but I don't really understand 100% what you're telling me. But what do we do about it? What do I do about it? And that's the good news that we referred to a little bit earlier, is a lot of this stuff can be naturally supported. So lowering your stress footprint is what I always talk about. So being aware of it, being aware of all your stressors, controlling your breathing, focusing on what you want to happen, not what you don't want to happen. It's subtle, yeah, feel good, PMA kind of thing, but constantly live in that energy and you will change your energy. It's amazing how that happens. Get active. I know you can't go out and you're social distancing, but you can get out. You got to move. Movement is, and it can be in your own home. It can be in your backyard. My grandmother used to walk the halls of her building. A lot of people can, depending on, these are things that you have to change up. But other things is not using plastics, not putting plastic wrap. These are things that should already be known now. Not putting things in the microwave. Not putting Tupperware in the fridge with foods. It should be in glass jars. Being aware of your plastic bottle use, really, really important. Being a good filtration system for your home, for your water, good healthy food, good healthy air. What about your EMF exposures? Can you remediate your home somehow? What about your living space? How often are you on your phone? All of these things stimulate cell danger. All of them stimulate cell danger. All of the cell danger changes impacts the way your hormones are metabolized and used, which also go through some of those same pathways as your neurotransmitters and require nutrients and vitamins and minerals to really make sure that you're maximizing your recovery, and then doing the proper tests so that you can come out of this way healthier than you went into it. So hopefully that made a lot of sense to you. I will continue to produce this content so you can, be the one or two distinctions away from really busting loose your health and getting back on track with life, so that when this is over, which it will be over, you can now get back into the things that you were missing. Because how bad is it where even before the having to be in isolation, that you couldn't go out with friends, you couldn't go to events or social things because of your exhaustion, and you still can't because it's mandated. But then when that's lifted, you don't have the energy to do that. That's a real travesty in my mind. And my goal is to, while we have the time together, while I'm still coming to work and helping you guys, you think outside the box and be able to do that. So what I do is I do consultations with you guys, but it has to be with those that are really serious about getting better. It's a no obligation, no charge consultation, but I only ask you have 3 things. Number 1, you really know that you needed to fix this yesterday. And if you don't fix it, you're really concerned what your future will look like, because it's time to shit or get off the pot. I swore, sorry about that, but it really is. Number 2, it's you're coachable. And that means that you just don't passively receive all the information we give you, but you're critical about it. and you want your doctor to listen to you because you have valuable information to add, but you don't know it all, in the sense that you're only going to pick and choose what we recommend. We're a team, and I listen to you, you listen to me, but we get you through this together, and that's the best way we can. Because if a doctor doesn't think that you and your body know more about your body than they do, then maybe you need to see a new doctor. And then the last thing is resourceful. Listen, you have to be resourceful now, in terms of maybe you're not working at all, maybe you've been laid off, maybe your business is down, but you've been a resourceful person your entire life, and you need to be even more resourceful. That's the reason why you need to be even more resourceful, where we work together. Insurance doesn't pay for this, and potentially we need to run some genetic testing or spend some time figuring out what your hormones are looking like and what your neurotransmitters are looking like, or what's happening with your cell danger response. But you know that at the end of it, you can't put into a value what you're going to get coming out of it. So that's what I'm looking for. I'll put a link in here and open up a time for me and you to just get clear on where you are now, what you've done, what's working, what's not working, but most importantly, where you want to go. And then my goal will, if I have the ability to tell you what you need to do to bridge that gap and how to do it quickly, if that's like something you sound like you want to do, I'll put a link to this. So anyways, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I look forward to ending your adrenal fatigue nightmare. Have an awesome day.